everybody who has taken time out from their busy schedule to be here with us on this Sunday evening. So thank you so much for that. Today I have chosen a topic to discuss is okay. Yeah. So, the topic that I have chosen to discuss is snoring. So, snoring is pretty much a very common symptom and a very ignored symptom. People don't take snoring seriously. Snoring, the impact it has on sleep, having fragmented sleep, all of these effects don't show up quickly. It takes years together, to show the metabolic effects of having a poor sleep. Patients tend to develop early onset of diabetes mellitus or hypertension, and they never realize it is all because they are not getting adequate sleep at night. Uh, so I'll begin with three clinical scenarios, basically to show how and what are the reasons that we end up having snoring. The first clinical scenario is of a 42-year-old gentleman who has pretty much a sedentary lifestyle, and the BMI of this patient is around 34. Has The patient says that he gets 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night, but when he wakes up in the morning, he's not very well rested. He has brain fog and he feels irritable and tired the entire day. And on examination, what we could find over here is that patient has, obviously he has obesity, he has a thick neck, and examination of the oral cavity showed that the tongue was pretty bulky, the palate was pretty bulky. So this is the examination finding of the first patient. Now, the second clinical scenario is of a 28-year-old male who's quite athletic, goes for exercise and everything, but his main complaint would be that he has a lot of nasal allergies. Whenever he lies down to sleep, his nose gets blocked and he's not able to breathe better, ends up snoring and mouth breathing. The third is a 35-year-old female who has a normal BMI, has no nasal complaints but usually complains of throat discomfort. So whenever there is a change in weather or she's had something cold or something sour, she ends up having a very sensitive throat. She ends up snoring at night, and she does not have a very bad disturbed sleep, but she says that morning when she gets up, she does not feel refreshed and her throat is very sore, and throughout the day, as the day passes, it gets better. So all of these various phenotypes are presenting with only one symptom, that is snoring and poor sleep at night. So to understand snoring, it's not everything should be branded as obstructive sleep apnea. So any problem that happens which starts from the nasal vestibule over here and it goes up till the level of the vocal cord, any blockage in this entire passage can lead to the presentation of snoring, fragmented sleep at night, or disturbed sleep at night. So in the nose, it could just be something as a simple deviated nasal septum or turbinate hypertrophy, presence of polyps. In the nasopharynx, it could be the presence of adenoids. At the level of oropharynx or the retropalatal area, there can be a block over here or a tongue fall, which is squishing the airway. These two specific areas are the ones that we brand as obstructive sleep apnea. And this could either be a partial obstruction, which is called as hypopnea, or a complete obstruction, which is called as apnea. So, what is sleep? There is an entire science behind sleep and what we call as adequate sleep. So, sleep is technically divided into two stages. One would be the non rapid eye movement of sleep, and the other is the REM sleep. In the non REM sleep, it is further divided into three stages, and in every stage, we go into deeper and deeper sleep. So, amongst all these four stages, we spend most of our time in stage two and stage three, which comprises around 70-75% of our sleep. And it is during the stage three sleep that there is physical recovery. There is the growth hormones also have circadian rhythm, so they are produced more at night. It helps heal our muscles, whatever the wear and tear has happened throughout the day. And at this stage, even the heart rate and the blood pressure goes down. So the body shifts from an autonomic, in the autonomic system, there is a change in the tone from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic tone, leading to fall in heart rate and the blood pressure. And the REM sleep, it is the dreaming stage of sleep. And over here, whatever our memories are converted into long-term memories. It provides us emotional stability. So the biological role of sleep comes, it helps in hormone regulation, it maintains our cardiovascular system, it strengthens our immunity, consolidates memory, it removes toxins from our CNS. So all of these are the benefits of sleep. So, in case someone is not able to attain good sleep, they don't attain this stage three of sleep. They tend to be in stage one, stage two of sleep, and a little bit of the REM sleep. This leads to complications in the cardiovascular system, that there is early onset of hypertension, arrhythmias, uh, and neurocognitive impairments are there, that the patient feels sleepy throughout the day. There's impaired concentration, reduced cognitive function, and increased risk of accidents as when the patient, say, is driving or operating heavy machinery. So these are the symptoms that I've enlisted. Pretty much the patient will have snoring at night. The partner may witness episodes of apnea, arousal after that. There may be gasping, choking at night, excessive daytime sleepiness, morning headache, irritability, and mood swings. So we need to understand and curtail treatment for every patient according to their need. So there is a questionnaire. You can start with a questionnaire when the patient walks in to understand how severe their problem is. There is a stop bank questionnaire that is available. There is Epworth questionnaire, Pittsburgh sleep questionnaire. So you can understand how severe and how bothersome the symptoms are for the patient the next day. I would advise that the patient gets a thorough ENT examination, which comprises of diagnostic nasal endoscopy, where we check if the patient has a deviated septum, presence of turbinate hypertrophy, or presence of a polypoidal mass in the nose. The video laryngoscopy is a very good tool to assess the upper airway dynamics. So in our institution, in our center, we do this. This is done in an awake patient. There is a flexible fiber optic scope which is introduced through the nose, and the areas that are assessed would be the nose, the nasopharynx, the retropalatal area, the posterior part of the tongue. All these areas are checked, the vocal cords are checked, and it gives us an idea and assessment that how compromised the airway is, what are the critical areas that needs to be targeted. Apart from that, we can subject the patient to sleep study. There are various levels of sleep study that can be done. The level one is the one in which the patient gets admitted to the hospital, and we monitor the heart. We do hook the patient to a number of gadgets that tells us how many episodes of apnea, hypopneas the patient is having. Is it all obstructive, or there are certain central apneas also happening? So this is level one happens in the hospital, but level three study, it is done at home, where a technician will come and he'll hook you up with a few gadgets, and that test can be done at home, and it is more convenient. Many a times patients, because of anxiety, are not able to sleep in the hospital, and therefore it will not give us good sleep study results. Another level is the level four, the one which you can track with your smartwatches, which would not give you such great grave details about your sleep, but it will just tell you whether there was a spike in your heart rate, how much was the oxygen desaturation. So basic informations can be attained via it, and the sleep can be monitored with a smartwatch as well. There's another specialized test that we do, which is called drug-induced sleep endoscopy. In our institute, we prefer doing it right before we are planning. We have taken the patient up for surgery in the OT. We evaluate the retropalatal area and kind of decide what kind of palatoplasty is required for the patient. So when you have a patient coming to you with complaints of sleep, disturbed sleep, snoring, so you need to analyze the patient. You have to give him the questionnaire, understand how disturbed his sleep, his day-to-day routine is after after a poor quality of sleep. Do a good thorough ENT examination, and you can give treatment options based on whatever examination there is. So there is CPAP therapy or BiPAP therapy that can be provided. There are various surgical options and lifestyle changes, but all these treatment modalities are not independent on of each other. So these are always provided in combination of one another, depending upon how severe the symptoms are for the patient. So, amongst the surgical options, if we talk about nose, then we talk about septoplasty, turbinoplasty. These are pretty basic ENT surgical procedure. If we talk about oropharynx and if the patient has huge tonsils, so we do tonsillectomy. The other specialized surgery that is there for sleep disturbances is called as the palatoplasty. So, in palatoplasty, um, the retropalatal area. So this is just a 3D representation of the retropalatal area. So if you consider this to be the space that the patient had pre-op, so we do palatoplasty. This is like a specialized type of surgery where we use sutures and we move the muscles around. We provide suspension and sling techniques to open up the retropalatal space. So the retropalatal space not just opens up in the anteroposterior diameter, but it also opens up laterally, so the patient is able to breathe better at night. This is just one of the specialized procedure which is called as barred pharyngoplasty. This is an intra-op picture of the same. Now, a special mention I would say is we usually think that snoring only happens in adults, but no, that's not true. A good set of obstructive sleep apnea happens in children. Children who are around 1 years to 8 or 9 years of age, they have huge adenoids that can cause to obstructive symptoms. Plus, the presence of huge tonsils can again cause to obstructive symptoms. And those kids would usually have mouth breathing, snoring. They're very restless at night. They keep turning, tossing in their bed. And the next day, they may have poor perform. How does it impact their development? They may have poor performance at school. There may be daytime hyperactivity, and it can even affect their growth. There are kids, parents come to us, they are saying that, the kid is eating, but we don't see any gain in height and weight. That is because they are not going into deep sleep and the growth hormones are not produced properly, helping them to gain height and weight. So in pediatric age group, the treatment that we provide is tonsillectomy. We remove the tonsils, and adenoids we do with a technology called as coblation, where we clear up the adenoids from the nasopharynx. Um, so basically, there are various ways of targeting a disturbed sleep or the symptom of snoring. The first thing that we need to do is look intentively and keenly at what is bothering the patient. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Trisha. Like, as a layman, like I think our doctor colleagues would have a lot of questions, and please ask your questions. Anytime you interrupt, feel free to interrupt us. You can ask your question or you can type your questions. Dr. Trisha, my one question is to you is as a layman, as a layperson, and not a doctor, that almost all humans have incidences of snoring one time or the other. So when is it a problem? When is it regular every night, and how
Yes,
is it?
when it gets regular. See, whenever you have something as a common cold or you're having a bad throat, at that time I can understand during those symptomatic days for like say a week, for 15 days, you are having those symptoms and gradually it goes away. Problem comes that when you're snoring on daily basis, you're sleeping with your mouth open, the next day you will understand when you've not got adequate sleep. The next day you just feel tired, you don't have the energy to do anything. So when those symptoms become chronic, that it's happening pretty much on daily basis, that is when you have to pay attention to it. Okay, why this is happening? Because this is not normal. And as I said, it is a pretty ignored symptom because everybody is like, yeah, we snore a little bit. What's the big deal? Only my partner gets disturbed. That's fine. So yeah.
Now, I'm coming back to the partner question, right? Like when we talk about smoking, so while the smoker's health is impacted, so is the non-smokers because of secondhand smoke. So in this sleep apnea, like the victim is the other person also because their sleep
Yes,
gets
very true.
disturbed as much, if not more, than the. So how? So basically, ma'am, these kind of disorders or these kind of conditions, mostly people who snore, they are not even aware until unless there is that
Yes.
symptomatic, there are symptoms the following day. So basically, my question is that how do we understand as normal people or our doctor partners who are GPs and who see patients regularly, then uh, when has the time come that the ENT referral or intervention is required?
Uh, so the thing is, if the patient is complaining, like I would start by the level of obstructions. So if the patient is complaining about problem with his breathing, that if they say that one side of the nostril is always blocked, or they say that whenever I lie down to sleep, my nose gets clogged up, these are symptoms that the patient itself will notice. You don't need a partner or somebody else telling you, okay, this is happening with you. These are symptoms that you know on your own. And if the patient is having the next day after a good sleep, the patient thinks I have got a good sleep, but the next day if they feel symptoms of headache, or it's a young person, 28, 29-year-old patient, and his BP is still in the normal range but it is going on the higher side, so then he can come to us, just get a regular ENT examination done in order to rule out that there is no problem.
Okay. So if somebody faces this, then normally a ENT checkup, even to rule out any any
Yes.
any structural issues around this, should be done. Okay. Now, ma'am,
Yes.
one another question is like you mentioned some surgical options as a treatment
Yes.
methodology and some lifestyle options, and basically what you
Yes.
said is that these work in combination. So
Yes.
normally, people are scared of surgery. Like if
True.
if if some a doctor recommends me, although I run a healthcare organization, that you have to undergo surgery until unless it is something like a last resort, I would be scared to uh,
Hmm.
undergo the knife. So then, I mean, basically what I want to ask, ma'am, when it is clear that there is some ENT issue, underlying deep ENT issue, then the doctor decides what is the treatment modality. So, like, it is such a common issue, like snoring. You know, is
Hmm.
my question to you is, what are the lifestyle fixes which reduce the frequency or which brings it under better control?
So every patient who comes in with snoring, it is usually not that we advise surgery to everybody. Ki aap, you get your nose fixed or you get your tonsil removed. No, that is not how it is. So if the patient has a very sedentary lifestyle, which is happening quite often with the kind of work we have, the corporate culture that has come in, that you sit in your chair, you do a lot of work with your laptop and all. So the sedentary lifestyle is causing obesity in people. So the first thing that I would say amongst lifestyle modification is to have a more active lifestyle, that is to exercise more, to be careful of what you're eating, not a lot of fatty stuff or unhealthy diet. You have to cleanse your diet to some extent, incorporate exercise on a daily basis, try to reduce weight. Because many a times there is nothing at fault. The palate is not that bulky, the nose is also good, but they have like a thick neck. So having a thick neck itself is one of the reason why you develop obstructive sleep apnea. So for that, what helps is exercise, regular exercise, working out, all of that. Those lifestyle modifications are the first stage. So if I have like a very obese patient, the first thing that we advise is you do lifestyle modification, try to lose some weight, and then you come back to us, and then we'll reassess how you're doing. And based on that, we'll give you the treatment options, that is the patient can become a CPAP user, or he can undergo surgeries as per required. But one should be mindful, because if you have to use a CPAP machine, it's like it comes with a mask. You wear that mask on your face, and it gives pressure puffs of air, say every half an hour or 45 minutes, based on the severity of sleep you have. So many a times people don't enjoy that pressure puff that comes to their face, and they discontinue using a CPAP machine. And the pressures are set very high if the patient has like a badly deviated septum. So you have to set up pressures high so that it bypasses this obstruction. So then in those cases, then going under the knife, getting the surgery done becomes important. But otherwise, lifestyle modification, if you have a sedentary life, take efforts to change that aspect.
Okay. Dr. Trisha, you mentioned thick neck. So, what
Yes.
is the definition of thick neck? Because thick neck is also indicator of muscularity. In fact, the body fat percentage estimation method, like we use
Hmm.
BMI as an indicator, which can be very off for certain individuals. So there is a US Navy method calculator where thickness of neck is a very important
Hmm.
factor, and being more muscular is actually better for for lifestyle. So thick neck is like fat around neck, or if somebody is muscular, they would also have
Thick
to.
neck is basically fat around neck. That is what is said because it causes a collapse over here. So at night when you're sleeping, your muscle tone goes down. So if this is all of this would collapse. So if there is fat, it will collapse and it will cause the base of the tongue to squish over the epiglottis. So that is basically what I mean by thick neck. And going by the OSA definition, the circumference of more than 43 centimeter for men and more than 40 centimeter for women is what is considered as a thick neck. And usually, if a patient is obese, the neck will also be thick. Not that, the patient is like quite proportionate all around and just the neck is thick.
Wrestlers have very thick necks. So, and they're muscular.
Two
Anyway,
questions in the chat for
so
Dr.
we
Tricia.
have a lot of questions. So then the questions from Dr. Isaya. Dr. Isaya is from Tanzania. So thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much, Dr. Trisha, for this interesting topic. Can you elaborate more on the circadian rhythm and hormones? That is his first question. Elaborate more on
Mm.
circadian rhythm and hormones.
Sorry. Talking about, and can you repeat the question? I'm just going through the chat. Okay,
Yeah, yeah. So
circadian
the
rhythm
question.
and hormones. Okay. Okay, so usually what happens is the stages of the sleep cycle that I spoke about. So the stage three of the non-REM sleep, that is when the growth hormones are released in the body, which are responsible for the repair of the muscle wasting and tearing that has happened throughout the day, and it helps with growth. As in if we talk about pediatric age groups, the children they get their height, they gain their weight through the growth hormones that are produced. So if you are not going into the stage three of sleep and you are just in that light sleep, that reparative, restorative action that is supposed to happen in your body would not happen and you would feel tired the next day.
Okay, ma'am. His second question is elaborate more on the type of sleep stages of sleep. He couldn't catch up, so just he
Okay.
wants.
Okay, so if we talk about sleep, so every individual goes through 4 to 5 sleep cycles, and each sleep cycle is around 90 to 110 minutes. Now, these sleep stages are divided into non-rapid eye movement of sleep and rapid eye movement of sleep. So the NREM sleep is further divided into 3 stages as N1, N2, and N3. So N1 is the lightest sleep that we are in, and if you are in that stage of sleep and somebody wakes you up, you immediately wake up. You don't have that brain fog, you don't have that fatigue, and this just comprises 5% of our entire sleep that we have during the night. N2 and N3 are the two stages where we it comprises the majority of our sleep. Around 75% of our entire sleep is in these two stages, followed on by the REM cycle. REM cycle is the rapid eye movement in which we have all these vivid dreams, and individuals who have sleep disorders such as sleepwalking and all of that happens in the REM sleep cycle. And in this cycle, that is where our memories consolidate. So whatever has happened throughout the day, that goes into long term memory during the REM sleep.
Okay. So, ma'am, we have a few questions from Dr. Miriam Chipimo. Dr. Miriam is president of GIVO Zambia Doctor Chapter. So, her question is, how do most patients find themselves in your clinic, like regarding this issue? That's the first question.
I think it's a blend of all. I can't say that it is just because of one. I do create social awareness. There are referrals that come in. I mean, I'm not sure how to answer this question, but like it's a blend of everything.
Okay, so basically, her questions are, how do they find themselves in your clinic? Is it by doctor referral or self-referral? Secondly, are you creating any awareness with the general community? And if so, how and what has been the response? No, but ma'am, when they end up, you must also be tracking, the sources when you create
Many a
awareness.
times it is actually most of it that is happening of like whatever track I have kept, it is by the patients that I have already treated. They refer more patients, and that is how I come to know. They'll come and even tell me ki, you operated on this patient. They said they had a say good response after that, and they have referred us to you. Plus I do have a Insta handle where I create general awareness, so I do get patients from there as well.
Okay.
And there are Artemis is a big hospital, so there are multiple departments, so there are cross referrals also that pour in our OPD.
Okay. How much is the GP referral outside Artemis? Because many a times patients would go with a problem to a GP, and then the GP would recommend that go to ENT. So how frequent are those?
Uh,
You're not tracking.
Usually with the GPs, say common cold and things like that, they fix it themselves and they do a great job at it. But if it reaches to a point that it is not getting fixed, then they come to us. So that would comprise probably 20-30 percentage of my OPD.
So there's a follow-up question from Dr. Isaiah. Can taking wine at night help reduce this problem? Okay, ma'am, I also want to know. I think it increases the problem, but that's what I've been told from a while.
Uh, I am not sure. I have not read anywhere in any textbook or literature that taking wine helps. But chamomile tea is one of the things that they say it calms the nerves, that helps. Taking melatonin helps at night. But wine, I am not sure.
Okay, ma'am, if we expand wine to alcoholic beverages, uh,
Yes.
I think it
They
increases
are
the
more
sleeping.
they are more on the lines of disrupting your sleep. Because if we just take it by the fact that it is alcohol, it causes dryness, and many a times you don't eat adequately when you're having wine or alcohol. So, you go into that calorie deficit. So I don't think taking wine helps or makes sleep better. But I'll have to look into this.
So, Dr. Ivan is from Uganda. His question is, thanks, doctor. Compare CPAP with BiPAP or BiPAP. I don't know how it's pronounced.
Uh,
CPAP with BiPAP.
so So the concept of CPAP and BiPAP varies. Many a times patients who are not able to handle a CPAP machine are put in a BiPAP machine. So there are two phases how we set the pressures. Basically, a PAP machine is an airway splint. So whenever you're having an obstruction in your upper airway, it sends a puff of air and it kinds of opens up the block that is happening over here in your neck, say at the level of the retropalatal level or at the base of tongue level. So there is an I'll first explain BiPAP. It'll get easier to understand CPAP. So in BiPAP, there is an inspiratory phase and an expiratory phase. So based on where the problem lies, there are pressure settings which are different for inspiratory phase and for expiratory phase. For instance, a patient who requires an inspiratory phase setting of say the pressure has to be around 8, but for expiratory he just needs around 4. So that is set accordingly. A continuous PAP where you give continuous air pressure, it does not matter whether it is in the inspiratory phase or the expiratory phase, the pressure remains the same to pneumatize, to provide airway splintage.
Ma'am, now there's another question from Dr. Isaiah. So his question is, he has had patients, athletes complaining of lack of sleep after vigorous exercise. What is the relationship of lack of sleep with excessive exercise? I mean, it's counterintuitive also, because
Hmm.
general belief is when we are too tired, we sleep deep. So, but Dr. Isaiah has observed opposite in case of athletes. When the exercise vigorous, they feel lack of sleep.
It could be related to the muscle wasting that happens. A lot of exercise when it is done, it causes the muscle wear and tear. So probably that could be the reason. I'm not sure about this.
Okay, Dr. Trisha, is there any like sometimes, okay, I don't know, like medically, I want your medical opinion on this. So sometimes when people are too tired and they are actually in deep sleep, then also sometimes, they don't snore regularly, but then sometimes they snore. So is that, or is that just normal belief that deep sleep is
Sorry,
calling?
can you repeat
So
yourself
when
again?
people are very tired, and
Mm-hmm.
sleep, deep sleep, then also sometimes people who don't snore regularly, but they tend to snore. So is that common, or is that just
That is common. That is like a little physiological that when you're very tired, you have had a hard day and then you're sleeping. That days, if you snore, that's okay. That's what I'm saying. Not every snoring has to be branded like a pathology, and it has to be seen with that eye or with that lens that, snoring, if you are snoring, it's like a bad thing. No, it's not. Many a times as physiology, you're tired, you snore, that is fine, but when it becomes chronic, disrupting your day-to-day life, that is when it has to be looked into, that what is going on, what's wrong.
okay? So, ma'am, we have a couple of questions from Dr. Ornana. So his first question is, but he's thanking you for the presentation. Now, now he is sort of, reconfirming his conclusion from your talk. So we can say that snoring issues is more of structural than physiological. Is that correct?
uh, it is both actually, depending on what. So you have patients who have the physiological part of it, where first I'll talk about the structural part of it. Say if the nose is blocked, there is an anatomical obstruction. You do an ENT exam, you find a proper anatomical obstruction that could be in the nose, it could be in the nasopharynx, oropharynx. Over there, you can actually explain to the patient that the reason why you're snoring, the reason why you're not getting adequate sleep, or all your problems are there is because of this structural problem that you have, this structural block that you have, and if we fix it, the snoring will get better. It could happen in a very nice lean individual. Say they have a very bad deviated septum, you go fix it, and that problem is sorted, and they'll say कि yes, now after the procedure we don't, like the patient would say that I'm not snoring, I don't have that problem. The patient, okay. The non-surgical treatment option is basically the CPAP or the BiPAP machines that are available for the patient. It depends upon severity. The ones who have mild or moderate kind of obstructive sleep apnea, they can even go into lifestyle modification rather than directly going and doing a CPAP or a BiPAP. CPAP and BiPAP are reserved basically for those patients who have very severe, who fall in the category of very severe obstructive sleep apneas, and where the oxygen saturation is really falling down to 78 60s, it is going down to 60s, and those patients, it is where we advise a pap machines if they don't want to undergo any kind of surgical interventions, or they are very grossly unfit to undergo a surgical intervention.
Okay, I think uh, we still have some time left. If there are any more questions, please ask. So, ma'am, just a very high level summary of today's talk. So, I mean, snoring is common, but it becomes a if it is regular, either there could be it's mostly because of obstruction, I mean structural obstruction. It could be because of a temporary condition like cold, etc., or it could be
Yes.
because of some underlying medical issue. Then the ENT specialist decides whether it is perennial and then either there are surgical options and somebody does not want to offer surgery, then there is mechanical devices like CPAP and BiPAP. Is that a very high level, a very simplistic? Is that summary correct?
Okay. You want me to summarize that?
No, no, I just wanted to confirm with you. Of course, it's more nuanced
Yes.
than that, but as a awareness,
Well, a basic gross understanding is as what you have said. If snoring or something is happening temporarily, or on the days when you are tired, then you don't have to worry about it so much. But if it is getting too chronic, or your snoring is too loud, it is disturbing sleep of your family members, they are complaining of it, then it is time to get checked. Uh, with the ENT, just to undergo a basic diagnostic test, whether if is everything okay, do you need a sleep study or not, and based on that you can decide what kind of therapy can be given.
okay. Thank you, Dr. Trisha. Well, today we wrapped up the session very fast. So if there are no many, I mean, if there are any follow-up questions, you can ask them on the group, and we can direct them. A GO team will direct them to Dr. Trisha and get a response. And if there are any patients that you have determined that they have chronic issues around it and severity is high, please share the cases for review so that the right therapy based on patient preferences can be determined for them. So, Dr. Trisha, if we have your permission, we can conclude the session.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much for joining in.
Thank you.